everyone, and we're going to do another screencast on fractions. This one's finding an equivalent amount or an equivalent fraction, not an equivalent amount, an equivalent fraction. And they can be a little bit tricky because unless we kind of do a couple of them, we can quickly see that they are a little bit confusing, but do not worry. I'm here to help, and I'm going to show you just how to do these. Now, we've covered this a number of times, so if you haven't seen this before, then please pause the video and read this. But if you have, we're going to move on nice and quickly. Some important information is I'm going to go through some equivalent fractions now, and you're going to see some of them are really easy to see, and some of them are a little bit more difficult to see. I'm going to come up with a top tip or a top tactic to help you with that. This helps me, hopefully it'll help you. But let's look at the first one, and we're going to look and say we've got 4/8. Every single fraction that comes up on the screen on this slide is an equivalent fraction. Some are easier to see than others, and that's why we need to do a couple of little tactics. So the first one is 4/8. Let's bring out the second fraction, and we see, I've already told you these are all equivalent, which means they're worth the same amount. If I was to cancel this down and go for 4/8, if I was to cancel this down, I would get 1/2, wouldn't I? Divide this by 4 and divide this by 4, then I would end up with 1/2, 1/2. So we can think about it like that, scale it right down, but some of them are a little bit more difficult. So what we do is we say, okay, can I get 4 to 8? And the answer is yes. I would times 4 by 2 to get it into 8. Okay, so whatever I do to the bottom, I need to do the top one fractions. So if I times 2 by 2, I would get it to 4. So we know that these are equivalent. And we can very, very simply say, yeah, they're equivalent, happy days. But sometimes we get fractions that don't look that equivalent. For example, we get this 9/18. So therefore, when we get those ones, we need to try and think about, okay, so how would I cancel that down? Can I make it a bit smaller? Can I make it into something that's more kind of bite-sized for me? Well, let's divide this. Let's divide this by 9 and divide this by 9 and end up with 1/2. And we know straight away that 1/2 is an equivalent fraction. So we can say that is also an equivalent fraction. And then we're going to go through and we're going to have a look at a couple more. So we've got the old 1/2, don't we? Yeah. And we've got all of these. All of these are also equivalent. We've got 10/20, that's a half, 15/30, that's a half, 30/60, that's a half, and 45/90, and that's a half also. But sometimes they are difficult to do. So therefore, we just have to take time. We have to give ourselves, try and make them as small as possible for a start, and then we can see if they're still equivalent. So let's look at an example now. We've got a fraction here, 6/15, and we're trying to look for equivalent fractions through here. So straight away, all we do when we do this is we always try and make sure that we're not going and dividing, but we're timesing in our brains. And what I mean by that is, let's take this first fraction. I could say, can I make 15 into 6? Well, the answer is we should be thinking, can I make 6 into 15? What do I need to times it by to get to 15? Well, it's not that easy, is it? But I can make 2 into 6 by timesing it by 3. So if I times 2 by 3, then I get that into 6. So what happens if I times 6 by 3? What do I get? Well, I don't get 15, do I? I get 18. So I can safely say that these are not equivalent. What about this one? I could take 5 into 15 by timesing it by 3. So I need to do that to the top as well. Does it equal 6? 1 times 3 doesn't equal 6. So I can say that that is definitely not equivalent either. What about, can I get 3 into 15? Yes, I can. Timesing it by 5. Once I times 2 by 5, I don't get 6, I get 10. So I can say that's not equivalent. Here we go now. We've got the last two. We've got 5 into 15. So we're going to times that by 3. Whereas if I times 2 by 3, surprise, surprise, I get 6. I get 15 and I get 6. So I can say that these are equivalent fractions. So therefore, I would circle it. And on the last one, Again, we're not going to think about dividing because most people's brains struggle with that. So we're going to go this way. What do I times 15 by to get it to 30? I times it by 2. And if I times 6 by 2, do I get 12? And the answer is yes. So I can safely say that is also equivalent. So that's how you would do these questions. That's how I would do them. And then you'd go from there. So you give it a go now. You've got 2 6 as a starting point, and you've got to try and circle the fractions that are the same or are equivalent. Worth the same amount is the same thing as the fact that they're equivalent. So pause the video now, give it a go, come back and see if you've got it correct. So let's go through the first one. What do I have to do to get 2 into 10? Well, I've got to times it by 5. If I times 6 by 5, I do not get 15, so that can't be an equivalent fraction. What do I need to do to get from 3 to 6? Well, I could times that by 2, couldn't I? 3 times 2 is 6. What if I times 1 by 2? Then I do get 2 6. So I can safely say that that one is an equivalent fraction. So I'd circle it. Well, this one, I'm going to times 6 by 2 to get to 12, 2 by 2 to get to 4. So I can say that is also equivalent. Sorry, I'm going through a bit faster, but I'm sure most of you have got this absolutely spot on. What do I have to do to get from 2 to 6? Times it by 3. I'm going to times 6 by 3. I don't get 16, so I can say that's not equivalent. But on the last one, how do I get from 2 to 10? I times it by 5. If I times 6 by 5, I get 30, so I can say that that is also equivalent, and I'm done. Well done. I'm sure you've all done fantastically well. So let's do one more now. One more, and then we're ready for the quiz, and you're ready for the rest of your day or evening. So pause the video, give it a go, and come back and see if you've got it correct. So even quicker now. Can I get from 5 to 15? 50. Not 15, 50. I times it by 10. If I times 2 by 10, that does give me 20, so that is correct. How do I get from 10 to 50? Times it by 5. If I times that by 5, I do get 20, so that's also correct. How do I get from 50 to 100? I times it by 2. If I times 20 by 2, I get 40, so that is also correct. We're having a right roll here, aren't we? How do I get from 10 to 20? I times it by 2. If I times 40 by 2, I don't get 50, so I know that's not correct. Can I get from 9 into 20? I can't. Can I get from 18 into 50? I can't easily. But this is where I need to think, don't I? I need to sit there and say, okay, let's try and scale this down. Let's divide this by 9. Let's divide this by 9. And we end up with 1/2. Can I get from 2 to 50? Yes, I could times it by 25. Can I get from 1 to 20 by times? No, I can't. So I know that that is not correct. So on those little tricky ones, it's well worth trying to scale them down to work with something that you do like to work with. And now it is time for the quiz. So all you have to do is what we're saying is we're saying that this is the same as this. Fill in the top numbers. Come back and see if you've got them right. I'm sure you'll absolutely smash them. Okay, so here goes the answers, everyone. We can see here on this one, we times it by 3. So I've got to times this one by 3 to get it to 6. What did I do here? I times it by 4. So I times the top one by 4. What did I do here? I times 4 by 4 to get 16. So I times the top one by 4 to get to 12. And that is it. That is the screencast done and dusted. Remember, if you've done well, I'd highly recommend writing a revision card with 3 questions, 1 easy, 1 medium, 1 hard. But if you've already done that, or you're just an absolute superstar, then hopefully you enjoy your day. And as always, it's been a pleasure helping you with your maths today.